Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome into the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, hop to the chat to be part of the conversation. Maybe you're watching on X, __ Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app, and of course, 1430 AM if you're driving around the Indianapolis area as well. Our fearless leader, Chris Ballard, had to do time with the media yesterday, and it went about as poorly as you could have expected. Chris Ballard getting very defensive over all of the decisions that he has made with the Indianapolis Colts roster, and more specifically, the choices that he has made with the Colts' most important position, quarterback. Drafts Anthony Richardson 4th overall. Going into year 3, he's not even going to be the Colts' week 1 starter, and it's raised a lot of good questions that need to be asked. And yesterday, Chris Ballard was asked about Anthony Richardson's future here in Indianapolis.
Not a lot of talks with AR, but I've had a lot of talks with his agent. Coaching staff handles, they talk to Anthony a bunch. I mean, I've talked to Anthony. Because the one thing I think is getting overshadowed a little bit is Daniel. Because I let both of them competed, professional, battled to the end. And at the end of the day, Daniel, won the job. Does that mean we're down on Anthony? No. But I don't want to, dismiss that, Daniel he's had a good run here. It reminds me a lot of Alex Smith that we had in Kansas City, who I thought was just the ultimate professional. Day in and day out, the team knew exactly what they were getting. And I feel that's kind of the same thing with Daniel. So, I know the story's always been about Anthony, but also let's don't lose sight of, Daniel did some good things. And he's been a really good professional. He's been through a lot. And then going to Anthony, I know the negativity and it's easy to say, okay, he's done. And I don't agree. I've said this numerous times. I do not agree with that. I think overcoming challenges and obstacles along the way are good for anybody. I do. I'm proud of Anthony, of where he's at, how far he's come. He's come miles. I mean, I want you to think back, and it's tough on any young quarterback in this league. But for him to keep taking the growth steps that he has and to work so hard and then not get the goal for himself, all right, now to continue to do that, that's when we got a chance to see real growth. And there's some value, there's a lot of value in sitting behind a guy that's a professional and watching and learning and growing and working on the things you need to work on without the same pressure of being the starter. There's a lot of good to that.
Chris Ballard right there talking about Anthony Richardson's future here in Indianapolis. And there's a lot to unpack there. Talks a little bit about Daniel Jones, talks a little bit about Anthony Richardson as well. First, I just want to thank Chris Ballard for listening to the show. I really appreciate it, Chris. You're probably listening right now. If you ever want to come on the show and talk about these various things that you said, Chris Ballard, I would love to have you on. And he said, Jonathan, how do you know that Chris Ballard is listening to the show? Because I've been on this from day one. I've been on the lack of Daniel Jones coverage since the start. It has been all about Anthony Richardson from the jump, from the writers, on the blogs, from the Indy Star writers. It has been about Anthony Richardson from the jump. Very little on Daniel Jones, aside from the very obvious things of he hasn't been good since 2022. That was the only good year of his career. Aside from that, there has been very little commentary around Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones came into town. Everyone said you were the third string quarterback in New York last year. They actually kind of ended up cutting you. You ended up on the Vikings where you didn't even dress at the end of the year, everyone handed the job to Anthony Richardson. And then the Colts are like, we didn't hand the job to Anthony Richardson. We actually handed it to Daniel Jones. And now everyone is all up in arms. And part of that is just because there was this great assumption that the Colts were just going to hand the job over to Anthony Richardson, even though they told us all offseason that this was going to be a real competition. They told us all offseason that this quarterback competition would be dictated by who was better at all the things that Anthony Richardson isn't very good at. Consistency, in and out of the huddle, changing the protection, getting the Colts into the right play. Once again, Anthony Richardson, not very good at any of those things that I just listed. So even though the Colts tried to tell you and me and everyone else that is a Colts fan that they were probably going to give the job to Daniel Jones without ever saying that, we didn't listen, or you and the rest of the Indianapolis writers didn't listen. Now everyone's mad, and it's quite funny. So yes, Chris Ballard's correct. There has not been enough coverage of Daniel Jones. Once again, Chris, thank you for listening to the show. Been on that from the jump. Now, to be fair, Chris Ballard and the Colts framed this as Daniel Jones was coming in to push Anthony Richardson. And I do think that, everyone that assumed that the Colts would have preferred to start the guy that they took 4th overall a few years ago over the guy who got benched for Tommy DeVito last year and hasn't been good since 2022. I do think that everyone that assumed that was correct. That's what I assumed. The best thing for the Colts would have been for the 23-year-old to have a really good offseason, figure stuff out, come in, and be awesome, because there is truth behind the statement that the Indianapolis Colts, their ceiling is significantly higher with Anthony Richardson than it is with Daniel Jones. You're probably not winning a playoff game in the AFC against the likes of Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, or Josh Allen with Daniel Jones as your quarterback. If you just go back to last year and you were to pull up all of the teams that made the playoffs, how many of those quarterbacks could Daniel Jones legitimately be better than at some point during the season? I'm going to say not very many. I'm going to say none. And when you work through it, obviously there's Patrick Mahomes. I don't think anyone expects for Daniel Jones to be better than Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen with the Bills or Lamar Jackson with the Ravens. The 4th seed last year was the Houston Texans, CJ Stroud. I would be stunned if Daniel Jones was at some point in the season better than CJ Stroud. The 6th seed were the Chargers. Excuse me, the 5th seed, my fault, were the Chargers. Yeah, Daniel Jones will not be better than Justin Herbert at any point during the season. It's not going to happen. Last year, Russell Wilson was the starting quarterback for the Steelers. They were the 6th seed. If you wanted to tell me that Daniel Jones could surpass where Russell Wilson was at last year, okay, I could see that. But is he going to be better than Aaron Rodgers this year? Probably not. And then the 7th seed, Denver Broncos, Bo Nix, who had a really, really good rookie season. I would be very surprised if Daniel Jones surpassed the kind of quarterback that Bo Nix was last year, considering that, considering that Bo Nix put up better numbers than all of Daniel Jones's career bests. So that was always going to be the holdup with Daniel Jones. Whereas with Anthony Richardson, if he'd come back and he'd had a really good offseason and he had, become more accurate and he had, found a way to be better at setting protections and he'd spent more time watching film and doing all those things, then sure, Anthony Richardson this year probably wasn't going to be better than Mahomes or Allen or Lamar. But the rest of those guys, sure, why not? You could potentially talk me into that if Anthony Richardson was to reach his ceiling. And so while I do believe that the Colts wanted to start Anthony Richardson, once again, the guy that they drafted, they couldn't. Because Anthony Richardson simply just isn't good enough. Chris Ballard said it in that clip. He said, quote, Anthony Richardson has come miles. Anthony Richardson has come miles, and yet he still couldn't beat out Daniel Jones, the third-string quarterback for the New York Giants last year. I mean, what more do you need to know about the guy? He's come miles, but he couldn't beat out Daniel Jones. I just, like, that doesn't make sense, first and foremost, because if he's come miles, then I would like to think that he could surpass Daniel Jones. So one of two things isn't true. Either one, Anthony Richardson has not come miles. I'm gonna bet that that's the case. Like, sure, he's gotten better. I'm sure he's come back and he's a little bit more accurate and all those things. But come on now, come miles, please. That did not happen. Anthony Richardson could potentially grow this year behind Daniel Jones. I do think that that's true, and that is something that we're going to hear from Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen and Jim Bob Cooter and Ed Dodds and everyone affiliated with the Colts. Because guys do get better sitting. Like, that is a real possibility. Look, Anthony Richardson now probably has a little bit more time on his hands, right? Like, stay late, keep throwing the football, find those practice squad guys who want to stay sharp and want to maybe have the opportunity to play at some point and continue to work on the accuracy. When you're in the meetings, ask good questions. This is entirely up to him. Entirely up to him. Jordan Love came out of Utah State incredibly raw in Green Bay. And he sat for 3 years behind Aaron Rodgers. And he comes out his fourth year, and everyone's like, all right, what is Jordan Love going to look like? And because if you watched him play Utah State, somewhat similar to Anthony Richardson, big, athletic, big arm, but incredibly raw. And he came out and he was, kind of shaky at the start, but halfway through the year, he all of a sudden takes off and something clicks, and he's been a pretty good quarterback since then. From the moment he got drafted through those 3 years of sitting, he got better. Now, were there still some things that he needed to learn through actually playing? Of course. But you can get better sitting behind another quarterback. The question is whether or not Anthony Richardson is going to put in the work necessary to make that happen. Because that's been the biggest question with him. Is he working hard enough? Is he going in early? Is he staying late? Is he working on the accuracy? Is he studying the protections? Is he watching film as much as he should? Those have been the questions. And the answer to all those questions this year has to be yes, in order for him to actually improve and maybe, just maybe, take the starting job back next year if the Colts give him an opportunity to win the starting job again. And it seems like they might. Chris Ballard said it pretty plainly. They're not trading him. They're not trading him. They don't need to. He is more valuable as a backup quarterback than a fifth-round pick. He is. Because for Chris Ballard, by trading Anthony Richardson for a fifth-round pick or a fourth-round pick or whatever it is, all he's doing is getting a fifth-round pick for the next general manager of the Indianapolis Colts. And then we have to remember that as bad as Anthony Richardson may be, he's still better than Riley Leonard. He's still better than him. And the Colts would much prefer run him out there in the case that Daniel Jones gets hurt than Riley Leonard. Now, Chris Ballard compared Daniel Jones to Alex Smith, and everyone saw that and went crazy. They're like, mentor, all this kind of stuff. And I think it's a bad comparison. It's not a good comparison. Alex Smith wasn't the Chiefs' savior, and he knew that. He accepted being a mentor. I don't think that's the case with Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is 28 years old. Alex Smith was 33 when the Chiefs drafted Patrick Mahomes. He had been in Kansas City for 4 years before Patrick Mahomes showed up. This is not the same thing. That is not what this is at all. Daniel Jones is 5 years younger than Alex Smith was. He is not here to be the mentor to Anthony Richardson for a year and then go place like that. That is not why he's here. He wants to come in. He wants to throw for 3,500 yards, which isn't that many, for the first time in his career, and he wants to lead the Colts to a playoff, to the playoffs, maybe win a playoff game, and then be offered a big extension here. He's here to stay. He's not on the back nine like Alex Smith was when he went to Kansas City. This is not the same thing. Daniel Jones is coming in looking for a long-term opportunity. Alex Smith, his long-term opportunity was coming to an end, and he knew it. It's very, very different. Chris Ballard, gotta love him, doing his best to spin things the best way that he can, but nothing gets by the people here at 1430. Now, Zach Pereles is set to join the show coming up here in 4 minutes. He's got some takes that I am very, very intrigued by, and there's one in particular that I firmly disagree with, and I'm pretty sure you will as well, but we're going to give Zach the opportunity to defend himself. Zach Pereles of CBS Sports joins the show when we come back in 4 minutes.
it's in today's sports world, it's here. The real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome into the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X _ Jonathan Smith, to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also follow our guest, Zach Pereles, over on X at Zach _ Pereles. Zach, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm great. College football's on tonight, and this time next week it'll be an NFL game today.
Dude, you're right. I can't wait. I'm so ready for it. I know you are too. I know everybody is. And so next week, Zach, I'm doing my big predictions week where I kind of go out on a limb a little bit. So I've got a couple prepped and ready to go. I know that you have a couple as well. One of them being that you have the Colts winning under 5.5 games. I understand the doubt. I don't think I'd make that bet, though. Why do you have them under 5.5 wins?
Yeah, so this is a tough one for me, because the thing that I like about the Colts is almost everything except for the quarterback. Like, I was going through this and I'm trying to make, these best bets that make sense. And some of this comes in with the odds that are being offered, but I just am really, really worried about Daniel Jones and about this quarterback room. I just don't see Daniel Jones being a guy who has any sort of ceiling raising abilities, and he has shown that he isn't a stable floor raising quarterback either. This was really a disaster the last couple of seasons with the Giants. I just am really, really worried about a team that has this much talent and just good infrastructure. I really believe is going to be dragged down by poor quarterback play, and the fact that Anthony Richardson, it seems like a sort of touch and go situation at the moment, that does not inspire me a whole lot either.
Joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports, where he writes an awesome newsletter and he writes NFL stories as well. You can read all this stuff over at cbssports.com. Here would be my question, and here's why I'm hesitant to take the under on even the 7.5. The quarterback play for the Colts was bad last year, and they went 8-9. And 2 years ago, it was Gardner Minshew and Anthony Richardson, and they went 9-8. Like just kind of like what you said, everything else is so good. You don't think that it's enough to get them to 7 wins as opposed to 5 or 4?
Yeah, I think that there are really good spots of this roster, like you mentioned, and I think it will be a 5-win team. And maybe if you wanted to, you could go under 6.5 wins. I just think that Daniel Jones, I think, is worse than the guys that you mentioned, unfortunately. I think Shane Steichen talked a lot about how that 2022 season was so good for Daniel Jones. If you look at the numbers there, he was not that effective of a quarterback. They ran a very, very basic offense, which maybe the Colts can do, but Daniel Jones is not the player that he was in 2022. He's had multiple injuries since then. He does not avoid pressure like he did. That was kind of one of the underrated parts of his game when he was younger, was he's a good athlete. He is not that athlete anymore. So I'm worried about it. And then there are a couple other areas where I have slight concerns. That defensive secondary depth has really taken some hit with injuries, so I'm a little worried there. Obviously, Kenny Moore is still great. I think Cam Bynum's a really good player too. And then you're working in a couple of new faces along that offensive line. I see so much talent on this roster in terms of individuals here and there, but in key spots, you see it's not a super deep roster. And again, I think Daniel Jones, you'll quickly find out, the Colts didn't get good quarterback play the last couple of years. I think that they're going to realize that even not good quarterback play was better than what this season will be.
Do you think it's going to be bad enough for the Colts to go back to Richardson at some point during the year?
Yes. I think at some point they will owe it to themselves. I really am worried that this is one of these situations where the team said Anthony Richardson just can't be the guy for us in this year where the coach needs to win, the GM needs to win. So they said, let's stick with Daniel Jones. But Daniel Jones is, again, just not a floor raiser. And at some point they're going to realize we thought this steady player could really help us out. And again, kind of like you mentioned, be the guy who, even if he's not good, we can still squeeze out 8-9 wins because the rest of the roster has its strength. I don't think that that's the case with Daniel Jones.
Joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports, where he covers the NFL and many, many other things. You can go read all the stuff over at cbssports.com. Here's my optimism, and I'm not saying you're wrong, because like if the Colts went 4-13, I don't think I'd be surprised. But if the Colts went 9-8, I don't think I'd really be surprised either. Just because, like, I don't know, like how can Daniel Jones be worse than Anthony Richardson was last year, who played in 12 games and only completed 47% of his passes? And I think one of the strengths of this Colts roster, and I'm with you, I have many questions about defensive line depth, and linebacker doesn't look very good, and Tanner Bortolini played a bit last year, but there's a reason why after he got hurt, they didn't make him the starter again. And Mac Gonzalez played last year, but he played tackle, not guard. So there's a lot of ways that this could go wrong. But my thing is, I think that the receivers and the running back, obviously Jonathan Taylor, those would be the strengths of the Colts offense. And if you have a guy like Daniel Jones, who can just complete like 63% of his passes, and, Josh Downs gets an extra 15 touches because of that, and Michael Pittman Jr. gets more touches, and so on. Like, I just think that playing Daniel Jones as opposed to Richardson last year allows them to get the ball into the hands of their better offensive players more. And so I would think that maybe that could get them to 7 wins, which is still under the 7.5.
Yeah, no, I think I totally understand your argument. I think that it's certainly, like, you're right. If he can just come in and provide, even if it's substandard, if it's not disastrous quarterback play, that works. It's just the last couple of years, he has not been able to provide even that substandard, mediocre, 30th best quarterback in the league sort of play. So I really just think there are some certain advantages. He's more accurate. He gets the ball out quicker. He does a better job, but he still takes a ton of sacks. He turns the ball over a ton. And you're not going to get the rushing upside. I understand Anthony Richardson, it was too maddening on a play-to-play basis, but Daniel Jones, it just hasn't been good enough either. And I think you're just going to miss out on some of those 3rd and 4s where Anthony Richardson could convert with his legs. You might get a weakly thrown out route by Daniel Jones, and you're going to realize, well, even if it wasn't a perfect throw, at least it was kind of accurate. But it's just not going to be dynamic enough for me. That's what I'm really worried about. I'm worried teams can just say, Daniel Jones does not throw the deep ball at all anymore. They will commit 7 or 8 guys to the run and load the box every down. And you're going to see a lot of really frustrated wide receivers, because these wide receivers are good and Tyler Warren is good. You're going to see a lot of them frustrated that they can't do anything down the field. And it's going to get too bogged down. I feel like it's going to feel like, why can't we hit a single deep ball? Why can't we do something to loosen up the defense?
Joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports, talking about the Colts. Zach, all of my consistent listeners are very confused right now, because everything that you have said is what I've been saying, and I'm arguing against you using all of their arguments. And so it's really kind of funny. Like, this Colts team is not a playoff team. If they go over 500, I would be surprised. The schedule's not super tough. That's part of why I think 5.5 is a little low, but I get it. I do want to talk about another text that you sent me last night. You have the Ravens winning the Super Bowl, and I'm just curious why. Not I haven't officially committed to a team yet, so sell me on why the Ravens are going to win the Super Bowl.
The Ravens are going to win the Super Bowl because for the first time in 4 years, 5 years, they're not going to make one or two inexcusable, honestly, like stupid plays that ruin their season that they don't do all year long until they get to the playoffs. I was, during the off season, you miss football so much. Sometimes you just want to watch highlights. And I did that for, a story I was doing on the Ravens. And my goodness, do they know how to lose important games? Fumbles at the 1 yard line. Obviously, last year, Mark Andrews with a horrible fumble and a horrible drop against the Bills, who they dominated for the entire game. But again, 1 or 2 plays and they lose. The year before, you had the Zay Flowers fumble at the 1 yard line. That was right after he had gotten a 15-yard taunting penalty that wiped out a big play. This year, they're just not going to do that. I think when you look at how they have been the better team in these games and just make 1 or 2 mistakes, at some point that has to end, right? And then the other thing that I would say is this defensive secondary is completely remade. Last year, first half of the season, they were really, really bad. They kept on giving up huge plays, and it was because they tried to move Kyle Hamilton around as kind of do everything safety, which he is. The problem was when they moved him, they were really, really bad at safety. So the second half of the season, they moved him back to safety, and they were able to be one of the best secondaries in the NFL again. This year, they want to weaponize his versatility again, and I think that they can. Jair Alexander, Chidobe Awuzie, 2 corners there that are going to be good if healthy. Obviously, I understand the health is a major concern, but if one of them is healthy, I think that's an upgrade alongside Nate Wiggins and Marlon Humphreys. And then I'm really excited to see what Malachi Starks does for this defense. I think he is a really good player. He's a guy who can go be your center fielder back there and allow Kyle Hamilton to move around. So the defense is going to be good. We already know how good the offense is. The only weakness that they have really addressed in the draft and in free agency. This is their year.
Joined by Zach Pereles, who just made a great case for the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. Here's the thing, though. I have to ask you about this one guy. What about number 15 in Kansas City? Because it's not just about the Ravens. It's obviously also about everybody else. What do you like about the Ravens more than the Bills and the Chiefs?
Yeah, the Bills, I am really worried about that secondary. They are signing guys. They're trying to make these moves. They're, kind of shuffling things right around the end of the roster cut down date, and I keep adding Jordan Poyer to their practice squad. I'm worried about that secondary. I really do think that they're going to struggle there. The safety play last year was really bad, and really that's what did them in against the Chiefs. And the first round pick that they got, Maxwell Hairston, is hurt, and he's been hurt for a while, and he's going to be hurt for a while. So that stunted his development. I thought it was a great pick, adding a lot of speed to that secondary that really needs it. But yeah, I'm really worried there. Like that is a red flag to me. If I had to find a red flag for every team, it would be, I have a lot of trouble finding one for the Ravens, but I have an easy way to find one for the Bills. And then you're right. Number 15 in Kansas City, the guy is like,
insane.
He wins so much, but it's also, he beats so many good players. Like we would talk about Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson as like all-time greats if Patrick Mahomes didn't happen to exist at the same time they did. Yeah, they're certainly going to be there. I'm worried about their running game, which was really bad last year. I actually had a story go up this morning about how they were the least explosive offense in the entire NFL, which is crazy. Like they were fifth in success rate because Patrick Mahomes does such a good job keeping them on track down to down. They were 32nd, dead last in explosive play rate. The Ravens don't have that problem. The Chiefs, I think they will be more explosive. I don't know how much more explosive. And I just think the Ravens have the best roster in the NFL, and they won't do those two dumb plays.
That has been the issue. Like, I think last year was the dropped Mark Andrews pass. You mentioned 2 years ago the Zay Flowers stuff. Once again, joined by Zach Pereles of CBSSports.com, where he covers the NFL and he writes a newsletter for them as well. That it is a must read. He wrote this morning about Micah Parsons and the second opinion on his back, and Kyle Hamilton getting paid. The Ravens, man. Well, look, it's not a bad pick. Like if I couldn't pick the Chiefs, I would probably pick the Ravens or the Eagles. I want to stay in the AFC North. You sent me this text last night too, and it's fascinating. You think Jamar Chase wins the Triple Crown, but the Bengals miss the playoffs. I'm with you on the Bengals not making the playoffs. Their over-under's 9.5, and I'm probably going to bet the under. But if Jamar Chase wins the Triple Crown, like, wouldn't that be, I don't know, that to me would just mean like another great year from Joe Burrow. Can their defense really be that bad again?
So I think it can be that bad again. I don't think it will be. I think it will be a little bit better, but that's assuming the offense will be as good as it was again, which that's a big assumption too. They have, I understand that you can't take a ton away from the preseason, but that offensive line was not great last year, and Burrow made a lot of those issues just go away by being Joe Burrow. I just think maybe the offense is a tiny bit worse and the defense is a tiny bit better, and they're just not good enough. Again, I'm really worried about the defense. I just think like the improvement that they could make is kind of wiped out by the fact that they were so bad to start with, and the fact that maybe the offense just isn't quite as good. Maybe Joe Burrow throws 2 more interceptions this year in crucial times. Maybe he doesn't throw for 40-plus touchdowns, which doing that back-to-back years is not something that happens very often. So I still think that he's going to be awesome. And obviously, I think Jamar Chase is going to be awesome. The reason he could win the Triple Crown is they're going to have to be throwing the ball all the time, just like they did last year. So, yeah, I think it's going to be kind of the same as it was last year. The rush defense looks awful. There's some talent in the secondary, but it really didn't look good last year with a lot of the same guys. They are going to be a little bit healthier. I think that'll help. So maybe the defense is a little bit better, but maybe the offense slips 1 or 2 spots. Or what if Joe Burrow misses a game or 2? He has not been the healthiest guy throughout his career. So again, really awesome offense. Jamar Chase is awesome. I love watching him and Joe Burrow just operate like they're so in sync, and obviously going back to their college days, that helps. The defense is such a big worry to me.
The defense is bad. And one of the counter arguments, once again, joined by Zach Pereles of CBS Sports, where he covers the NFL and everything else in his newsletter, which you should 1,000% go and subscribe to. One of the arguments here in Indy was, can Lou Anarumo really be that good when he coached that defense last year? And I was like, yes, he absolutely can be. The lack of talent, like you said, there's a little bit of talent in the secondary, but it feels very dependent on, hey, Trey Hendrickson, can you have 17.5 sacks again this year? And that's just an absurd number. So I'm with you on that. Jamar Chase winning the Triple Crown, I'd love to see it. That'd be awesome. And it makes sense, right? Like if they're trailing a bunch, then obviously he's going to have more receptions and yards and all those things. I want to go to one of my takes. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Packers the Packers are going to win the NFC North. I just think like everyone really likes Ben Johnson and the talent that Caleb Williams has is extraordinary. My thing is like I'd like to see Ben Johnson be a good head coach before we all just assume that he's going to be one. And so, like, that's kind of my issue with the Bears. The Lions have 2 new coordinators. I love Dan Campbell. I think he's much smarter than what other people think. I think he's more than just a rah-rah guy. But the defensive coordinator has never been a defensive coordinator before. He's never had to call plays. The new offensive coordinator he's been an offensive coordinator for 1 year. That was in 2017. So, 8 years ago. Geez, 2017 was 8 years ago. That's not a fun thought. And that was for the Jets, and they weren't very good that year. So I have questions about the coordinators. I know that the Lions roster is really good. And then you get to the Vikings, and is J.J. McCarthy going to be good? Like, I'd like to think that Kevin O'Connell is going to, work his magic, and he'll make J.J. McCarthy look serviceable. But I just have a lot of important questions for all the other teams. And then for the Packers, it's like Coach LaFleur is just, the best coach in the NFL that no one ever seems to want to talk about. Like, they win 10 games every year, it feels like. Jordan Love can be a little up and down, but I still think that he's a really good player. If he was the best quarterback in the division this year, I don't think that that'd be surprising. I know there's questions about the pass rush, but they were, I believe, top 5 in the NFL in scoring defense and sacks last year, and they're bringing back a lot of the same guys. I really like the Packers. Who do you have winning the NFC North, which is a division where you could probably talk me into any of the 4 teams winning it?
Yeah, I love this take. I think that right now I would pick the Packers. And it's because of the continuity you mentioned. Like, I still think the Lions have a great roster. I still think that they're going to be a really good team. But maybe it takes them a little bit of time this year just to get everything in order. And that would make total sense. Maybe they're a team where by the end of the season, they're absolutely rolling, but maybe they started a little bit slower. The Bears, I think the exact same thing about the Bears. I think that Ben Johnson will be a good coach, but we've got to see it first. And also, they might start slow. Caleb Williams last year was just a disaster from every single perspective. Like, the fact that he wasn't being told how to watch film, and it was just a horrible, horrible situation. So we have to kind of wipe that all away, I would say. I still believe in Caleb. But it might take some time for him, too. He's having to completely relearn and unlearn how to play quarterback. And then you're right. I think the same thing in Minnesota, where Kevin O'Connell is awesome, but maybe it takes J.J. McCarthy a little bit of time. There's no transition period for the Packers. We have to remember Jordan Love wasn't really healthy for a lot of last season. A healthy Jordan Love is back. They have a great offensive line with a ton of depth, a ton of versatility. They have too many wide receivers to count, but one or two of them has to be capable. And then that defense in that second year under Jeff Hafley, I think this is a really good bet.
Thank you. And that's like plus 290, plus 230, so, somewhere in there. And then, Zach, I think this is my favorite one. Once again, Zach Pereles of CBS Sports, where he covers the NFL. You can read his stuff over at cbssports.com. Everyone loves the Patriots in the AFC to be like the leap team this year because they hired Mike Vrabel. It's going to be Jacksonville. And I'm not saying that because of Liam Cohen, even though if you really like Ben Johnson, I don't know why you wouldn't like Liam Cohen, who just coached Baker Mayfield to what was by far the best year of his career. Last year, Zach, I made a bet that the Commanders would hit over 7.5 wins. And Zach, I'd really love to say that it's because I'm really smart and I knew that Jaden Daniels was going to have arguably the best rookie quarterback season of all time. But the reason why I bet them on the over there was because of the turnover luck. They were like last in the league in turnover differential, and a lot of turnovers in the NFL are luck-based. Like, it is a stat that fluctuates quite a bit from year to year. The Jags forced half a turnover a game last year. They were 29th in the NFL in turnover differential. And of those bottom teams, I like Trevor Lawrence more than Joe Flacco in Cleveland and the other quarterback situations. I think that they hit over 7.5 wins and make the playoffs, not necessarily because they're any better, but just because their turnover luck is going to be better this year than it was last year.
Yeah, I think I really, really like the Jaguars ceiling. I am still so worried that there's like some sort of curse in Jacksonville. But I really do like Trevor Lawrence. You look at last year, like, again, we talk about like Caleb Williams being in some bad situations. I think Trevor Lawrence has been one of the unluckiest quarterbacks. He walks in to Urban Meyer, and that was a disaster. Last year, the offense was just really stagnant and really not good. I think that this offense can be really good. I still really believe in Trevor Lawrence. You look at like some of the interception numbers, it's like he hits a guy in the hands and it somehow magically pops up in the air right to a defender, or there are two guys in the same spot and neither one of them catch it. Like, there's just so much that I think is going to be better. The turnover luck should be better. You're right. That's just one of those things that sometimes the ball bounces your way and sometimes it doesn't. And at some point it has to bounce the Jaguars' way. Yeah. And I think the Travis Hunter thing is so interesting because people are like, how much is he going to play on offense, defense, whatever? I think that we're forgetting that he's just an incredible player. Like,
Yeah.
Wherever he plays, he's going to be a huge help for them. And if it's 80% of the snaps on offense and he sprinkles in on defense, if it's a week-to-week thing, I really think this is a Heisman Trophy winner we're talking about, a guy who would have been the wide receiver 1 in this draft class and the cornerback 1 in this draft class, but nobody really knew how to classify him. He is going to be such a big help for them. I love Brian Thomas Jr., and I think Liam Cohen will help. Like, the Jaguars were everything was so difficult last year throwing the ball. Can we get Trevor Lawrence some help in just like 1 or 2 screen games? That'd be great because Liam Cohen's coming from the Buccaneers, who had the best screen game in the NFL. So I love this pick here. I also think that the Patriots will be better, but I don't think that they have quite the ceiling that the Jags do.
That's how I feel about it. Like, the Patriots will definitely better. Their over under win total is 8.5. And I'm like, that's too high for me. Like, will they be better? Yes. Will they make the playoffs? I think they're 1 year away from that. Whereas the Jags, I don't think they are. Like, I think that they have more than enough talent. They've got 2 really good pass rushers in the Walker kid out of Georgia, who was drafted number 1 overall a couple years ago, and Josh Hines-Allen, who had 17.5 sacks in a season. I think that was two years ago now. So I like their overall talent a little bit more than New England's as well. So, Zach, I went way over on time, but that's fine because that was an absolute blast. Very much looking forward to having you on throughout the course of the season. Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That is Zach Pereles. You can follow him on X at Zach_Pereles. He does a great job covering the NFL. Read all the stuff over at CBSSports.com. News came out, or I don't even know if I'd call it news. Some stuff came out about Jim Irsay and some of the last days of his life. Look, I don't know if it's true or not. The guy who wrote it, I think, works for the Washington Post. We know how reliable they are. So I see what's going on. I don't know if it's true or not. I'm not really going to talk about something that I have no idea about, especially when I haven't read the article. So there is stuff coming out about Jim Irsay. I don't know if it's true or not, but we are going to keep talking Colts right here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show when we come back here in about 4 minutes.
Rockets at noon. The real Jonathan Smith Show. Now, this is Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, X, the Indy Sports Ticket app, or 1430 AM if you're driving around Indianapolis. There's news coming out about Jim Irsay. I don't know what's real. I don't know what's not. Given his history, it seems believable, and this may just be the Washington Post got bored and they wanted people to click on their stuff, and so they made something up just kind of based on something that's pretty believable given the history of Jim Irsay. One way or the other, I mean, it doesn't really change how the Colts are going right now. Chris Ballard did a very long press conference yesterday where he talked about quarterbacks and he got a little testy and all that kind of stuff. And look, we're a week away from the start of the NFL season, which I am just super, super stoked about. We got college football tonight. Can't wait. Boise State, South Florida. It's going to be a ton of fun. So once again, when it comes to the Jim Irsay stuff, I haven't read any of it. I'm not going to comment on something or give a take on something that I don't really know much about. When we come back here in about 4.5 minutes, I'm going to give more thoughts on Chris Ballard's press conference yesterday and that entire debacle. I mean, just a brutal day for Chris Ballard yesterday, and I'll continue to highlight it when we come back in 4 minutes.
do this. It's the Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Hour number 2 here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. You can head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on X, _ Jonathan Smith, to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. Chris Ballard, long press conference yesterday where he was asked a lot of questions about, what the Colts were doing at quarterback. And one of them was, what does Daniel Jones bring to the table that makes Chris Ballard believe that the Colts can win with him?
His ability to run the offense, to get him out of good and bad plays, to know the checks, just the things that most veteran quarterbacks can do, and to make sure that we're continually moving the chains. That consistency is a good thing. And look, he has some explosive ability in him too. And I think we saw that in the preseason.
Chris Ballard right there talking about Daniel Jones. And look, Chris, he brings up consistency and his understanding of the offense. All of the things that we have heard Shane Steichen bring up time and time and time again. Here's the concerning thing for me. It is concerning, and all of you Anthony Richardson fanboys, you listen up. It is concerning that Daniel Jones has a better grasp of the offense and the protections and how to get in and out of different plays better than Anthony Richardson does. When you consider the fact that Daniel Jones has been here for one offseason and Anthony Richardson has been here for 2 full seasons and a full offseason. There is absolutely no excuse for Daniel Jones to have a better grasp of the offense and the checks and all those things than Anthony Richardson does, given the gap and how much time they have spent here in Indianapolis under Shane Steichen with this system. And this goes back to the lack of work ethic, the same thing we have heard about Anthony Richardson time and time again over his first 2 years here in Indianapolis. The dude just doesn't work hard enough. And if you need proof of it, there it is right there. 2 full seasons and an off season. And he doesn't have a better grasp of the offense than Daniel Jones. He doesn't understand the checks as well or the protections or anything else like that. And that is both concerning and very revealing about how Anthony Richardson has spent his time here in Indianapolis. Now, Chris Ballard, not the smartest guy in the world. If you don't believe me, go look at all of the decisions that he has made in the NFL draft. Chris Ballard using Daniel Jones's preseason performances as an argument is a terrible idea. He led 0 touchdown drives, and he only completed 53% of his passes. Not very good. He showed some explosiveness. He hit Ashton Doolin on a cool crosser, and after missing Tyler Warren wide open downfield, he came back in the next drive and hit it. Those are the only 2 throws that were, down the field and all those things. Just stick with the facts, man. He's a veteran. He knows how to set the protections, things that normal fans can't really see and understand. Stick with that. Don't bring up actual performance, because as soon as you do that, you open a can of worms and you can't put the lid back on the can. So just stick to the stuff that people can't see, Chris. That would be my advice for you going forward. And this next audio clip I'm going to play, it's my favorite moment of the press conference by far. Stephen Holder asked Chris Ballard how he can improve on the sideline, right? How can he get better when he's not playing? And Chris Ballard did not like the question. And it gave us what was by far the best moment of the press conference yesterday.
That Anthony can grow more in year 3 on the sideline does not make any sense to me. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I think and I think I explained it earlier. I don't know if you were listening. You're a good listener too. But I think there's times when, I mean, you got your question, your loaded up question that you want to answer. So that's what y'all don't listen to what I said before. I think it is good for young players, especially at the quarterback position. If they're not completely ready to sit back without the pressure of daily pressure of having to perform. Now, the pressure is still there because he's one play away, but it's much different. It's much different. I just think the little intricacies that they can learn by doing the backup role can serve them well, because he's still serving the start. Let's don't forget that backup role still serving the starter. Okay. And that's different. That's different, and it's different for Anthony. It's an area that, he's embraced, and it's been fun to watch so far, and it would be fun to watch as we go forward.
Chris Ballard right there. I think that if Chris Ballard looked at me and said, and you're a good listener to, I don't know what I feel like, Chris, what are you talking about? Oh, it's so funny. Oh my gosh. Stephen Holder. Oh my gosh. Anyway, Chris Ballard, a little prickly there because the pressure's on. Okay. This is his fault. And that's the thing in all this. Like Chris Ballard wants to get mad at reporters asking valid questions when it's his fault that they're asking these questions. He's the one who drafted Anthony Richardson 4th overall. He's the one who decided competition was the answer to everything. If he never brings in Daniel Jones, this is not an issue. It's not an issue, right? They could have just drafted Riley Leonard in the 6th round and said, hey, we're riding and dying with Anthony Richardson. Like, that was an option. And Chris Ballard had the first call on that. He had the first call on that because, like I said, he's the one who talked about competition. He's also the one who talks about, doing what he believes in no matter what, which is just a load of baloney. Okay. He had this thing for the longest time where he was like, I don't really want to draft a quarterback until I think it's the right guy, because as soon as you draft a quarterback, people want to run you out of town. He could have stood on his laurels and not taken Anthony Richardson. And look, would he have taken some heat for it? Absolutely. People would have been like, hey, you had the 4th overall pick. Why didn't you want to take the big athletic dude out of Florida? And you very simply could have said, because he's incredibly raw and I don't think he's going to be very good. He couldn't have said that verbatim because general managers don't talk like that, but you see where I'm going. And then they would have been like, well, what about Will Levis? And he could have been like, well, we didn't take him and neither did anyone else in the 1st round. So I think that should tell you all you need to know about Will Levis. 2 bad options. That's what he had. And he completely caved. And it was because there was pressure from the outside for him to draft a quarterback. And then, and this is the big thing, I don't think that the idea of competition would have ever crossed Chris Ballard's mind if DeForest Buckner had never brought it up. DeForest Buckner is the one who started the competition movement within the Indianapolis Colts organization. And Chris Ballard brought into it. And that could get him fired. He only went and got Daniel Jones because of that quote from DeForest Buckner. And now it may cost him his job because the guy that he took 4th overall got benched for a guy who got beat out by Tommy DeVito last year. It's just really funny. And the fact that he's upset about all these questions about the quarterback is just like, you shouldn't be upset about it. You're the one who put yourself in this spot. So quit whining, quit complaining, and just answer the questions. Here's more whining and complaining from Chris Ballard.
We do have like 51 other guys on the team. Do we have any other questions on the team? I mean, you can keep spinning this other one as many ways as you want, but we do have 51 other teams. Absolutely. And look, let me say this. They deserve to ask these questions. And I deserve, and look, I understand the doubt. I get it. And that's our job to go prove it at the end of the day. It's a long season. And things are good and bad. You have good moments and bad moments. But like I said before, like when you win, it sure helps a lot of those issues.
Chris Ballard right there. Just, reminding us all that there are 51 other guys on the team not named Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson. And that's true, but it all starts with the quarterback, a position that he hasn't been able to figure out for the last, 6 years now after Andrew Luck retired. It's tough to win without a good quarterback. We've seen it time and time again, not only in Indianapolis, but across the league. And with all of the turmoil at the position over the last few years, you start Anthony Richardson. He plays 4 games, gets hurt, has surgery on his shoulder. You end up having to go with Gardner Minshew for the rest of the year. That's okay, I guess. That happens sometimes. And then you bring him back and you make him the starter over Joe Flacco. And then you bench him for 2 weeks. And then you go back to him. And then he finishes out the season, except he doesn't. He gets hurt again late in the year. And you hold him out. And he doesn't finish the season. And then you come back and you're like, competition is the answer. And then you bring in this guy named Daniel Jones, who hasn't been very good the last few years. And then he beats out this guy that you took 4th overall that you have said needs time and needs reps. Once again, needs reps is that's just translation. They're not very good yet. Like, this is on you. Like quit complaining about it. Right, you're the one who put yourself in this spot, Chris Ballard. Seriously, it's you. It's all on you. This is your fault. And I just don't like the whining and the complaining. Like, it just, it just makes sense why the Colts aren't tough and why they're as soft as they are. It's because you got this guy leading the charge, whining and complaining because he's being asked questions that aren't that tough, questions that he should have seen coming. Simple as that. But his comment there at the end, if we win, all of this will go away, is absolutely true. And we did end up getting to questions not about Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones. Chris Ballard was asked what he liked about the team this year. And he was very happy to answer this question.
We knew we kept 4, knew we wanted to add, another guy. We're still going to bring some other guys in.
That's the wrong clip. Here's Chris Ballard on the strengths of the Colts.
I think we're really good up front. I think we're going to be really good up front on both sides of the ball. I think our wideout room is really good. We had to make some cuts there that I thought were pretty tough. I thought Treadwell, I love Treadwell. Think of this. I mean, guy's, over 30 years old, former first-round pick, competes his ass off every day. But it's a good room. It's an excellent room. It's like when you think in terms of like a basketball team, you've kind of got all the elements that you want when you're building a basketball team. You got a big man in Pitt who can win, both short, intermediate, and down the field with his size. You have Pierce who can stretch it. You have a young player in A.D. Mitchell who we think's, got big upside that, can create off after the catch. You got Josh Downs who I think is just tremendous. And then you got, Anthony Gould who's coming on and then, Mr. Reliable Doolin, who every time we put him in the game, he catches a ball and does well and is great on teams. So it's an excellent room and everyone kind of have a niched out role, but I do like the strength. I like our tight end room a lot.
Or is this what you?
He's pretty good. We thought he's going to be pretty good. And we think he's going to be a really good pro. I don't want to put undue expectations on him, but he's pretty freaking good.
Chris Ballard right there talking about the strengths of this Colts team. And he started with the fronts. It's like, we're going to be good on both sides of the ball up front. Yeah, that's insane. No other word for it. This team is not going to be good up front on both sides of the ball. Maybe offensively, right? Maybe, Bernard Raymond, really good left tackle. Quentin Nelson, really good offensive guard. Braden Smith, when he's healthy, he's been a good player. The issue is Tanner Bortolini wasn't very good last year. There's a reason why, he comes in for Ryan Kelly when Ryan Kelly gets hurt. And then Tanner Bortolini gets hurt. And they put Danny Pinter at center. And Tanner Bortolini then got healthy. and Danny Pinter continued to play center in place of Tanner Bortolini. There's a reason for that. Okay, and maybe he was just a rookie, maybe an offseason of working out and all those things is going to help Tanner Bortolini have a really good year this year. I'm not convinced that that's going to happen. Matt Gonsalves, they had him out there, and the Colts' third preseason game, getting him more reps for a reason. And once again, what does he needs more reps mean? He's not very good. And they clearly felt like Matt Gonsalves needed more reps at right guard. It is a concerning thing for the offensive line. And then this defensive line, I've talked about it so much. I'm not going to do the whole 7-minute rant again, but Kwity Paye is an average edge rusher in the NFL. Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner are two good interior defensive linemen, but the depth behind them is lacking. Eric Johnson, Neville Gallimore, Adetomiwa Adebawore. They can rush the passer, but they can't stop the run. That seems kind of problematic. And then obviously you got Leatu Latu, who they're expecting to kind of take a leap this year. I'm not convinced that he's going to. We'll see. And then behind them, the lack of depth. Samson Abukum, 30 years old, coming off the Achilles tear. Tyquan Lewis, in his 30s as well, coming off of elbow surgery. JT Tuimoloau, people seem excited about. But, I don't know. He's a rookie. Like, it's hard to bank on a rookie being a good player. So the offensive line is question marks. The defensive line has a ton of question marks. Now, I will agree that the wide receiver room for the Colts is good. And I do think that that's part of why they're going with Daniel Jones. I'm sure that part of the Colts front office and the coaching staff just believes that, hey, like, if we can just have a quarterback that can get Michael Pittman Jr. the football, if we can just have a quarterback who can get Alec Pierce and Josh Downs and A.D. Mitchell the football, then we'll be better off than the occasional big play from time to time to Alec Pierce down the field, which Anthony Richardson provides. So I do agree that the Colts wide receiver room is good, but the tight end room, aside from Tyler Warren, I think is pretty underwhelming. I do appreciate Chris Ballard not putting any crazy expectations on Tyler Warren for his rookie year. And then he was also asked, Chris Ballard was, or he wasn't asked about this. Yesterday during the press conference, it was announced that the Colts got a linebacker off of the waiver wire, former third-round pick of the Jacksonville Jaguars that they waived. His name is Chad, I believe Chad Muma. So he that news broke during the press conference, and he was asked about Chad, and you can just kind of tell that they want to add more depth and better players in that linebacker room. I'll have that audio for you in 4 minutes.
may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
Uh-oh. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, you can also watch the show over on X, __ Jonathan Smith, to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app or on 1430 AM if you're driving around the Indianapolis area. Now, Colts, tons of Colts news. Jim Irsay news broke today. Haven't talked about that a ton. Not going to. I don't really know enough. Chris Ballard did a press conference yesterday where he talked about mainly the quarterbacks. He got a little testy. 8 straight questions about the quarterbacks. And he was like, there's 51 other guys. You want to ask me about any of them? And then, the Colts media finally relented. And they're like, all right, fine, whatever. And yesterday during the press conference, it was announced that the Colts picked up a linebacker off of waivers. So someone asked Chris Ballard about the linebacker. His name is like Joe Muma or something like that, former 3rd-round pick of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So Chris Ballard talks about him a little bit. And I think he kind of hints here as well at the Colts wanting to add a little bit more to the linebacker room.
We knew we kept 4, knew we wanted to add, another guy. We're still going to bring some other guys in. It's different than it was in the past, because in the past we usually kept 6 and dressed 6 in the schemes we were in before. But now, a little differently where, he'll play some dimes. So we're really only playing with a Mike and a Will. But Muma's we like him coming out. He could play probably both Will and Mike. He's good on teams. We liked him coming out of Wyoming. He's had some experience playing, so that's good. Good. I'm excited. I don't get to be, but excited to find out we got him.
Chris Ballard right there talking about this Joe Muma kid or John Muma, whatever his name is. I'll learn your name when you're good. All right. So they had him, and he talks about how they want to bring in even more guys into that linebacker room. I'm still very much saying Isaiah Simmons is a guy that they should go and give a tryout at a minimum, because that room just desperately needs help. It's just not good. As once again, that is the We Like Our Guys position group of the year. And it's just a lot of not good players. Zaire Franklin, not a very good player. Cameron McGrone, there's a reason why he was a 5th-round pick. And there's a reason why we haven't seen him play outside of special teams. Jalen Carlisle, same thing. There's a reason why he was a day 3 pick. He's on IR right now with his ankle issue. But, I mean, come on now. Chad Muma shows up and is just immediately the backup linebacker. Joe Bacci, he's a guy who's played for Lou Anarumo. But he was a part of that awful Cincinnati Bengals defense last year. So Gunalube, same thing. The linebacker room's bad. So I do hope that the Colts continue to try out various guys to play linebacker for him this year. And I hope that, one of them ends up being really good, because they desperately need help with that part of their roster. And to close the press conference yesterday, Chris Ballard was asked what defines success this season, and it's the first time I've ever heard Chris Ballard talk about this one thing.
Winning. I mean, we always do. We're accomplishing our goals. I mean, we all know. Like, I don't think I've ever shied away from the fact that we haven't been good enough. Like, I never shied away from that. And she doesn't either. She's just competitive. Both of them are. It's not just Carly, but so is Kaylin and so is Casey. They're competitive. I think that's the one thing about Jim that I really loved was, God, he was competitive, wanted to win. They got the same gene. So, I mean, success is winning. I mean, I think we all would agree with that. Success is not losing, it's winning. So that's what the goal is.
Chris Ballard right there talking about how success is winning. And About time someone said it. And that is the only thing that gives me any sort of, decent feeling about the Colts this year. For the first time in quite some time under Chris Ballard, that is actually what it's about. Every decision that has been made with this idea that we're actually going to try to win games this year. 2 years ago, when they draft Anthony Richardson, the goal was, let's develop Anthony Richardson for the future. And then he got hurt. And then it became a Gardner Minshew thing. And then it became about winning. And they went 9-8. Last year, what was the year about? Not winning. It was once again about developing Anthony Richardson and seeing what he could become. Right? And then, Richardson ends up not being very good. And then there's all this weird stuff going on with, hey, I thought this year's about developing Richardson. And it's like, no, like we want to win games, but like we still want to go back to Richardson and so he can keep playing and all those things. And then we get to this year and it's like, you know what? No more development. Let's win games. This is an older I think this is the oldest roster Chris Ballard has had during his time here in Indy. And it's with a lot of dudes that are kind of at a point where it's like, I would like to win something. Michael Pittman Jr. has been here a while. Quentin Nelson's been here a while, right? Who else has been here a while? Jonathan Taylor, he's been here a while. Like, these guys are ready to win, and it seems like the Colts are finally making decisions with that goal in mind. So do I think that the Colts are going to win a lot of games this year? Absolutely not. 7-10, 8-9. That is my expectation. If they go over 500, I will be incredibly surprised. And I will sing the praises of Shane Steichen. Because if they go over 500, it's going to be because Shane Steichen pulled out some like voodoo magic and he figured it out. And look, like that's his job as the head coach. His job is to figure out how to win with the guys that he's been given. And look, I don't think that the guys that he's been given are very good. But we'll see what ends up happening. Now, something very important happened yesterday. And we can all breathe a nice little, sigh of relief, Fox and YouTube TV have come to an agreement, hallelujah, on a deal. Short term, but it's a big deal because now you and I get to watch Texas play Ohio State on Saturday. And the news comes out about how, they're in, a bit of a standoff in terms of the negotiations. And people are like, oh, YouTube TV, you better get this figured out or I'm going to cancel my subscription and bah. Channel provider and channels and cable provider contracts are exactly like the NFL. Everyone freaks out when there's a report about how, Micah Parsons wants an extension and the Cowboys, they're pushing back and all this kind of stuff. And there was all this concern about Trey Hendrickson and the Bengals. Are they going to get a deal done? Terry McLaurin and the Commanders. Are they going to get a deal done? And in the NFL, the deal always gets done. It always gets done. Like the Micah Parsons thing, he's going to play this year. It's going to happen. The deal always gets done right before the deadline. And we're going to see the same thing with Fox and YouTube TV. Saw it last year with CBS and I believe YouTube TV, right? There was a threat that they could take away March Madness and everyone freaked out. And they were like, no, we need March Madness. And then, I think in like January, they figured it out. This is how it always goes. Don't worry. We're going to be fine. YouTube TV knows that people will leave if they don't come to a deal with Fox. And Fox knows that they have a lot of viewers over on YouTube TV. So it's in their best interest to figure out a deal as well. Okay, so not a super surprising thing there. We have college football tonight. We have 5 straight days of college football, to be a little more exact. We have games tonight. Boise State's going to play South Florida. Can't wait for that. Yeah, and that's not just like can't wait to watch football thing. No. I'm genuinely curious about Boise State. They were really good last year. They were the best non-Power 4 school in the country. Obviously, they lose Ashton Jeanty, who was a large part of their success. What do they look like with him, without him, in their first year, without him this year? Nebraska plays Cincinnati tonight at 9. That's going to be a good game. Those are two Power 4 teams, week 1, facing off, going at it. They're playing the game at Arrowhead. I don't know why. If I was Nebraska or Cincinnati, I would 1,000% want to host that game. I wish that the game wasn't at a neutral site, because games are just better when they're played in someone's home arena. Like tomorrow night, 8:00, Auburn is going to play Baylor. Can't wait for that game. That game will be more fun just because the game is on Baylor's campus. Saturday, when Texas plays Ohio State, that game will be significantly more fun than Syracuse and Tennessee, not only because the teams are better, but also because the game is being played in Columbus, in the Horseshoe. That matters. It does. Ohio State, Florida State is playing Alabama, and I'm pretty sure that they're playing that game in Tallahassee. I'm really not sure. But I hope that they are, because games played in someone's actual stadium is significantly more fun and significantly more interesting. It is being played in Tallahassee. That game is going to be so much more fun because of that. And you could just continue that on down through the line. And in 2 weeks when Oklahoma plays Michigan, so I guess not 2 weeks, a week from Saturday, when Oklahoma plays Michigan, same thing. I believe that game is being played at Michigan. That sounds right. But it'll be significantly more entertaining, significantly more fun because of where the game is being played. The environment is just louder. It's better. I only like those neutral site games whenever they benefit me and they're close to me. But if they're not, then play them in the home stadiums. Yeah, Michigan is playing Oklahoma on the road, I believe at Michigan. If I can, yeah, it's being played in Norman, and that's going to make the games so much more fun. I wish that college basketball would do this a little bit more often as well, because a lot of these big games, they're played on neutral sites, and I get it. One of the cool things of Feast Week is all the different tournaments that are happening, and that's fun, but games are just more fun when they're played on someone's home field. John Buzzard chiming in saying that's why the Big Ten football championship at Lucas Oil is horrible compared to the opening rounds of the playoffs. Completely agree. I think that's a little bit different just because you don't know who's playing in the conference title game, and travel plans and all those things are kind of a pain to kind of figure out, especially a week before. So that makes a little bit more sense. Indianapolis used to be kind of a middle ground as well. Seemed to be a good place where everyone could kind of gather. That's obviously very different now with teams like Oregon and Washington and USC and UCLA in the Big Ten. But yeah, games and environments, that's part of what makes college football special. When you talk about the NFL, Seattle, Arrowhead, those really seem to be the only places where people are like, yeah, it gets really loud there and it impacts the game. College football, I feel like we say that about just about every stadium, right? We say it about Michigan and Ohio State, and we say it about Washington and Alabama and Georgia and LSU, Baton Rouge. The environment is just different and it's special. It's part of what makes college football. And I'm going to call it the NFLification of college football isn't my favorite thing. Expanding the playoff, every game doesn't matter anymore, kind of similar to the NFL, paying players, all that kind of stuff. Those things aren't necessarily bad, but it gets away a little bit from what separates college football from the NFL. So more home games, less neutral site games, and let's go with it. It's just way more fun when that is the case. Chris Ballard was caught on camera yesterday whining and crying about the quarterback's situation that he created. I've got that audio for you in 4 minutes.
The best takes? Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in. No matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy's Sports Ticket, if you want to head over there and subscribe. Maybe you're watching on X__Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. Colts captains have been announced. DeForest Buckner, not a surprise. Quentin Nelson, not a surprise. Kenny Moore, not a surprise. Zaire Franklin, not a surprise. Daniel Jones, not a surprise. People make a big deal out of who's named captain every single year. It's not a big deal. Like, your starting quarterback is always going to be one of your captains. Your middle linebacker is almost always going to be one of your captains. After that, it's just like, who cares, right? Like, seriously, I do not care at all about who the Colts captains are, right? Like, there's not a single team in the NFL whose week one starting quarterback is not a captain. That's just not a thing. So, the people who are going to get upset about Daniel Jones being a captain, get over it. Like, this is just how the NFL works, okay? And those people upset about Daniel Jones being a captain, you need to hear this, because Chris Ballard wants you to know how good Daniel Jones is, and he also wants you to know about Anthony Richardson's future here in Indianapolis.
Not a lot of talks with AR, but I've had a lot of talks with his agent. Coaching staff handles, they talk to Anthony a bunch. I mean, I've talked to Anthony. Because the one thing I think is getting overshadowed a little bit is Daniel. Because I let both of them competed, professional, battled to the end. And at the end of the day, Daniel, won the job. Does that mean we're down on Anthony? No. But I don't want to, dismiss that, Daniel had a good run here. It reminds me a lot of Alex Smith that we had in Kansas City, who I thought was just the ultimate professional. Day in and day out, the team knew exactly what they were getting. And I feel that's kind of the same thing with Daniel. So, I know the story's always been about Anthony, but also let's don't lose sight of, Daniel did some good things. And he's been a really good professional. He's been through a lot. And then going to Anthony, like, I know the negativity and it's easy to say, okay, he's done. And I don't agree. I've said this numerous times. I do not agree with that. I think overcoming challenges and obstacles along the way are good for anybody. I do. I'm proud of Anthony, of where he's at, how far he's come. He's come miles. I mean, I want you to think back, and it's tough on any young quarterback in this league. But for him to keep taking the growth steps that he has, and to work so hard and then not get the goal for himself, all right, now to continue to do that, that's when we got a chance to see real growth. And there's some value, there's a lot of value in sitting behind a guy that's a professional and watching and learning and growing and working on the things you need to work on without the same pressure of being the starter. There's a lot of good to that.
Chris Ballard right there talking about just kind of his plans for Anthony Richardson, and had a nice little piece in there as well on Daniel Jones. First and foremost, thank you, Chris Ballard, for listening to the show. It is greatly, greatly appreciated. I've been on this really from the jump. Okay, I've been on the lack of Daniel Jones coverage since he came here, and it was just so obvious, the lack of coverage, right? Like the Colts official Twitter account, which is too lazy to capitalize Chad Muma's name, by the way. All that they posted was Anthony Richardson content. All that anyone around here wrote about was about Anthony Richardson. Everyone handed Anthony Richardson the job except for the Indianapolis Colts and me. Right? Been on Daniel Jones as the starter for the last 2 months. Okay, don't like it. I don't think he's very good. I don't think that the Colts are going to be very good either. But hey, I guess we'll see. Now, to be fair to everyone who was kind of expecting for Daniel Jones to back up Anthony Richardson this upcoming season, I do kind of feel like the Colts and Chris Ballard framed Daniel Jones as a guy who was really just coming in to push Anthony Richardson. And that was going to kind of be it. And then he shows up and he learns the offense and he understands the checks and he understands, how to adjust the pressure adjust the protection to, not allow for there to be pressure. And he got the ball out quickly and, he was on time and on target. And all of a sudden, he kind of looked like he was going to be the guy. And it's just, people were kind of caught off guard by that and surprised by that. And that's why you have all of these questions and all the whining and crying and complaining that you do in the world of the Indianapolis Colts. Okay. And I think that for Chris Ballard and for Shane Steichen and the rest of the people in that building, like they wanted for Anthony Richardson to win the job. I think everyone was right to assume that the Colts would have preferred to have started the guy that they took 4th overall a couple of years ago over the guy who got benched for Tommy DeVito last year. I think that's common sense. Like if he wins the job, then Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen probably feel a little bit better about, their jobs here in Indy, but he didn't win the job. And so they're going to Daniel Jones. And what's really concerning is in that clip, Chris Ballard said that Anthony Richardson, quote, has come miles. Anthony Richardson has come miles and he couldn't beat out Daniel Jones. Look, man, if you've come miles and you still can't beat out Daniel Jones, then, name something more problematic. Seriously, like if you've come miles, then, you should be beating out Daniel Jones at a minimum. And he couldn't do it. And, Chris Ballard just the whole, everyone thinks we're moving on from him and we're done with them. You are. Let's just be like, you're done with them. Sorry. You just are. Right? You've benched him for the second time in the last 2 years, once for 40-year-old Joe Flacco, and now for former third-string New York Giants quarterback Daniel Jones. Okay? And Chris Ballard, made it pretty clear yesterday as well that they're not going to trade Anthony Richardson, and they shouldn't. He is significantly more valuable as a backup than whatever 5th-round pick they would get back for him. Okay? And look, like you have to think about Chris Ballard in this spot. If he trades Anthony Richardson for a 5th-round pick, all he's done is earned a 5th-round pick for the next general manager of the Colts. That's all that he's done. It's a 5th-round pick that he's never going to see unless they win this year. But he needs to earn a little bit of job security before he goes back to doing his thing where he just trades things in exchange for like 5th, 6th, and 7th round picks. Okay. The other part of this is Anthony Richardson is one play away, as cliche of a statement as that is. It is true. It is the truth. He is the backup and all those things. And if Daniel Jones was to get hurt, which is going to happen at some point this year, Anthony Richardson is going to play snaps for the Colts during the preseason, during the actual season. It is going to happen. And the Colts would much rather Anthony Richardson be the guy one snap away than Riley Leonard. Because, like, you know how it is. Like, there's pockets of the Colts fan base that for some reason loves whoever the Colts' third-string quarterback is. It was Sam Ehlinger, who is now on the Denver Broncos practice squad. And now it's Riley Leonard because he won a few games at Notre Dame with a really good defense and a really good run game. Riley Leonard, hopefully, doesn't have to play a snap this year. Chris Ballard also compared Daniel Jones to Alex Smith. And I hate the comparison because it's just not a good one. Alex Smith knew that he wasn't going to be the Chiefs' savior, and he accepted being a mentor to Patrick Mahomes for that one season. That is not what's happening here with Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is 28. Alex Smith was 33 when they drafted Patrick Mahomes and had been in Kansas City for 4 years prior. This is not the same thing. This is not the same thing. Daniel Jones came here to Indianapolis with the hopes of reviving his career. That was his goal. And he's taken the first step in that. He has taken the starting job from the guy that the Colts wanted to have the starting job. Daniel Jones is not here to be Anthony Richardson's mentor like Alex Smith was for that 1 year with Patrick Mahomes. Daniel Jones is here. His goal is probably to throw for 3,500 yards, which isn't very many, for the first time in his career, and to, win 10 games and make the playoffs and earn himself another nice contract that's more than 1 year, $14 million. That's his goal. Alex Smith, when he was in Kansas City, those first 4 years were all about winning. But once they got Mahomes, Alex Smith knew what was going on. That is not what's happening here. It's not what's happening here at all. Now, speaking of things that are happening, we have a great event coming up, Bourbon and Birdies. We did it last year. Had an absolute blast doing it last year. You can join me and everyone else here at Indy Sports Ticket on Saturday, October 4th for an afternoon of sipping some high-end bourbon and hitting some golf balls. Been working on my swing. Watch out. It is our second annual Bourbon and Birdies presented by Payless Liquors. Takes place at Back Nine Golf and Entertainment, and it'll be a great day of sampling incredible bourbons, hitting golf balls, eating food, and hanging out with friends. Tickets are on sale now at indiesportsticket.com. You can also text Bourbon, Bourbon, BOURBON to 317-228-1430 to buy tickets as well. It was a great event last year. I'm sure it'll be great again this year. That's going to do it here on The Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to tune into the show, no matter how you tuned in, whether that was YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket, maybe you watched on X, _ Jonathan Smith, maybe you listened on 1430 AM, maybe you listened on the app. No matter how you tuned in, I greatly, greatly appreciate it. I'll be back again tomorrow. Big college football day. Should be able to get Zach Gray back on the show. I'm going to have bets. It's going to be so much fun. I can't wait. Tomorrow's show is going to be great. The Dan Dockett show is going to be great today. We got Tom Luganbill at 12:30 and Dave Rebson at 2:30. Got a great show in store for you. Make sure you stick around, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow starting at 10 a.m.